Have you been feeling demotivated lately? Need a helping hand in figuring out your life? Well, look no further, because this, collection of PNGs might be the solution for you. The story is you as a reflective experience game made in Unity engine by Jake Todd. It loads straight in, no menu, and your only instructions are the controls in the top right. In simplest terms, this game is not really a game. You no-clip around a castle and its grounds, which contain some PNG inspirational quote images. That's the entire content. As such, the movement controls are just no-clip controls. WASD to go forward, back, left and right, E to go up and Q to go down on your vertical axis. You can press X and Y to invert the mouse, M to mute and unmute the background music, and you can scroll to zoom in and out, but you can do this so far that it effectively works like the movement mechanic, since it can take you forward and back all of the way out the map. You can also press R to return to the last saved position. On the first run I thought there was only one saved position since it kept returning me to spawn every time, but on quit and reload, it saved my position up in the sky, and then would only ever reset me there. Basically, your last saved position is always the position you quit at last time you played, or the spawn point on your first go. There are no checkpoints around the castle to respawn at. I'm gonna jump straight into an issue that I noticed straight away. The FPS drops at various points. I've turned on my FPS counter for some of the gameplay recording in this one, because even stood still at the starter area, looking from the original position to an image right next to me, it cut the FPS from 40-ish to a max of 15. Yet turning behind me, it went up to near 60. Zooming away from the castle also drops it to about 11 FPS at a certain range. I did a scan across the castle from atop, and it seems the central courtyard area is more of a problem when it comes to overall FPS. It seems to be that the more assets there are in a certain area, the FPS just dives. And my PC isn't so bad that it should be that low, considering how little in terms of interactables there are in this game. However, there are also individual images on top of this that tank the FPS on their own, though I can't figure out anything special about these in particular that would cause that. The map itself is the play area, the castle, surrounded by some mountains and mist. The castle is pretty detailed, with broken stones, wooden supports, sconces and some grass, climbers and trees that waver in the wind. Although the grass that's inside also wavers in the wind, so there's no real environmental distinguish. Some plants do grow straight out of the stone for some reason and disappear with their base inside it. Some grow in thin air in the case of this tree. Since you're no-clipping, you can zoom out to see all of it, but it only takes about 2 or 3 seconds to get to the edge. And the no-clip speeds up after a couple of seconds, so it doesn't take long to hit your limit. There's a huge visual flaw though in this map. Yes, on the outskirts you can see the paper edges of the mountains, but there's also a massive hole in the map just outside of the castle wall, where you can see the staggered sheet layers of the mountains. From above it looks like a bit of water, but there is no water. I wouldn't mind if it was further away, but it's so big and it only takes an accidental shift out of one of the walls for it to be right in front of you. And you cannot miss it. I've seen some compliments of the environment on the Steam page, and sure, there's some nice detail in the smaller parts, but it doesn't send a message that much care or attention has been put into the environmental layout when you've got mountain lasagna sheets hugely visible and hovering trees. The actual game premise is supposed to be that I am the story. I'm meant to use these inspirational self-help quotes to look inward and revolutionise my life, or something. In reality, I have actually had to do some introspection before. Many times. Prior to that, I would scoff inspirational quotes off. I still kind of do, because I don't find much value in them, but I get some people do, and to give it some grace, I thought I'd play ball. Some were decent, some I had some questions about. Some funny ones included make friends with fast food workers, or be a fast food worker, so that you never have to be hungry. breaking the law is bad, and make a project last as long as you want to, as long as you enjoy it. I would sure love them to tell that to my boss. Some more questionable ones included, I know prayer works, bold claim. A couple of contradictory ones saying, pain usually means stop and find a better way, followed not much later on by, pain brings an urgency which brings clear views of reality, thinking and perspective. So is pain good or bad? Should I stop and miss my clear views of reality? The other controversial one was, abusers become abused and abused people become abusers. Bit of a strange one to put in there. I'm obviously paraphrasing, but that's essentially what it's saying. Yes, some abusers may have once been abused and replicate it, but it was written with a kind of certainty that has a bad implication, that if you've been abused you are inevitably going to be a bad person, and that abusers should always be seen as victims. A couple of the more relatable ones were, journaling is good. Sure, this is personal preference, but my brain works stuff better written down. Punish drug dealers and producers, not drug takers. I can kind of agree, unless you commit a crime or do bad things under the influence, it's still your choice to do that. And you are the one that needs to know you. It's a bit cheesy, but essentially yes. In a way, the game did achieve what it was after. A bit of introspection, sort of. Some people might be into inspirational quotes as a good way of motivating themselves, but personally I find that because they could be written by anyone, I struggle to connect with them because the creator could be a hypocrite, and also they're often a bit too vague. They're meant to be like that to allow you to project a personal scenario onto them, I suppose. Though alternatively, some of them can be too specific. For example, targeting band members as being drama stirrers specifically. I'm pretty sure anyone can milk sympathy. I don't know what band members ever did to you. There's not really a flow to the pathway that you take to look at them. I tried to follow a certain path to make it easier to track where I'd been so I didn't miss any, but at some points the road forks and takes you to different places. The PNGs are double-sided as well, so sometimes you might think you should look from one angle, but it's actually meant to be viewed from the other. However, in some cases, the alternate side of the image is upside down. Most were legible both ways, but for whatever reason, a couple weren't. In a couple of places, the images are covered. One outside had a tree branch over it, one inside was in a doorway, so the top bit was covered and you had to look at it from the side or below, and another in a doorway was clipping out of the surrounding wall. It might have been better to put images with less text on them in these places, as one of them had a lot of information on and that made it harder to read. There are some inside, some outside, but all passed the spelling and grammar test. I understand what the creator was trying to do here, but I'm not really sure this was the best execution. At the very least, it would have increased immersion to actually be a player model, not no clipping, and have to walk around the castle. Sure, you couldn't hang stuff in the sky as easily, but you could just make some stairs to see those bits. That would prevent people seeing the holes in your wider environment, for a start, and it would allow you to add in some gameplay, like opening doors to new areas and turning it into more of an exploration and walking sim. Since you can zoom around so quick and from any distance, it also negates the quality of the environment, since, whilst it looks good at close proximity, you spend most of your time reading or could be flying around, so you miss the benefits of it. And actually, the assets remind me a lot of Bloodspear, so I'm thinking they're stock assets anyway, though I can't confirm an accusation of that. The only real value in the game is the quotes themselves, and how valuable you find them is entirely your interpretation. There will always be some you agree with and some you don't based on your experience, and whilst I can say it eked a small bit of introspection out of me, I can also argue that if you say enough vague things about enough vague topics, someone who's trying will definitely be able to pull something they relate out of it eventually. I prefer to get my quotes from Inspirobot. It comes out with bangers like, "It's more fun to be a little somebody than a big twat," "A cry a day keeps the penises away," and my personal favourite, die and give up. Overall, if I'm reviewing this as a game, I can't give it many redeeming points. There's no story, there's no gameplay, the design is decent until the point where there's a big hole in the map, and if you look close enough you'll start finding flaws, which the game also gives you liberty to do so since you have the access all areas experience. If you're going to let your player see all the bones and tendons of your game, my advice would be to pay attention to the details to keep the immersion. If you're going to be lax on your environment solidarity, then you might as well not have an environment as complex as a castle. The music is alright for background noise, and the art's subjective part really just depends on the receiver. The PNGs just look a bit flat in the world, and some of the covering and clipping through assets like walls, vines, and lights means the only real assets put in there haven't even been optimised to the space on some occasions. Nor is the FPS optimised either. I got half an hour out of a slow scour of the place and a second lap, but if you read at normal pace and aren't inspecting the details, it might last you 10, gusting 15 minutes. It won't hurt you to try it, but there's just not much there for a game, so I'm going to give it a 2 out of 10. You can have a couple of free quotes from me for your trouble. If it's stupid and it works, it isn't stupid. And don't be a dick. That's a good rule. I did it with white writing for more impact.